Alternate tunings are just plain cool. It's a great way to turn the guitar that you have already into a completely different instrument. In fact, it really encourages exploration of the fretboard as well. But the problem with alternate tunings is that every tuning comes with its own set of chord shapes and its own set of scale patterns to remember, right? Actually, that's wrong, because today I'm going to show you a 3-step method that will allow you to get into any alternate tuning, figure out the chords to that tuning, and figure out the scales to that tuning. So this is super easy. In fact, I believe in this method so much that I'm going to use 3 different guitars and 3 different tunings to prove my point. So let's get started with step number 1. Step number 1 is to identify the notes that you need for the tuning. We're going to stick to major and minor tunings here, which means we're going to tune our guitar to a chord. Every chord has 3 notes. Whether that chord's major or minor, we just need 3 notes to form the chord. And those notes are the 1st degree of the scale, the 3rd degree of the scale, and the 5th degree of the scale. So if we're going to say tune to open D, we're going to need the notes D, F sharp, and A. And to tune to open D, we're going to take our low E string, drop it to a D, leave our A string alone, leave our D string alone, take the G, knock it down to an F sharp, take the B string, knock it down to an A, and the high E, knock it down to a D. That's open D tuning. Those are the 3 notes we need for that. Now, let's look at G tuning. For G tuning, we're going to need the notes G, B, and D. And this is how it manifests on a guitar. We take our low E string, drop it down to a D, take your A string, drop it to a G, keep your D string the same, keep your G string the same, keep your B string the same, and take your high E string and drop it down to a D. That's open G using the notes G, B, and D, the 1, 3, and 5. But what about minor tunings? For minor tunings, we're going to follow the same exact procedure. We need the 1, the 3, and the 5 of a minor scale. Let's choose D minor since we already did D major. So we're going to need a D note, an F note, and an A note. So how that manifests on guitar is your low E is going to drop to a D, your A is going to stay the same, your D is going to stay the same, your G is going to drop to an F, your B is going to drop to an A, and your high E is going to drop to a D. There you have it, a nice sad minor tuning. So again, step number 1 is figuring out those 3 notes. You need the 1st degree of the scale, the 3rd degree of the scale, and the 5th degree of the scale. And you can use that in major or minor. Now, how do you make chords in these tunings? Well, let's head back to D major. So here we are in D major again, and we had to figure out the chords. Well, the beautiful thing is we just tuned our guitar to a chord. So if we're in D major, or open D tuning, if we strum all the strings, well, that's a major chord. A D major chord, as a matter of fact. And just let's pretend for a second we actually had to fret that chord. So we'd actually just pretend that we're holding the strings down here at the nut. It's a D major chord. Well, this chord's actually movable because now, if we go over the 5th fret and hold all the strings down, that too is a major chord, but it's no longer a D major chord, it's a G major chord because that root note on the low D string is a G note. And if we move it up 2 frets, well, that's actually an A chord. So we can play the 1, the 4, and the 5 chord in the key of D just by barring all the strings. We have the 1 chord, D major, the 4 chord, G major, and the 5 chord, A major. But you're probably asking yourself, well, Tone, what about minor chords in a major tuning? They're entirely possible. Remember, we tuned our guitar using the 1st degree of the scale, the 3rd degree of the scale, and the 5th degree of the scale. All we have to do to make a major chord minor is take that 3rd and flat it by a 1/2 step or 1 fret. So what's crucial here is we identify which string the 3rd is. So we have D, that's the 1, A, that's the 5, D, that's the 1, F sharp, that's the 3rd, and then A, the 5th, D, the 1st. So that F sharp string is the one we're going to manipulate. So if we have any major chord shape, I'm going to actually shrink this down to a smaller chord shape. I'm going to play just the high 4 strings. If we take that F sharp note and we drop it, meaning move it towards the headstock 1 fret, we've just created a minor chord. And since we're holding those 4 strings down, it's completely movable. So there's your movable minor chord shaped. In fact, for this alternate tuning, and for all alternate tunings, more on that in a second, you only have 2 shapes. The minor chord, or the major chord, and the minor chord. But how does this manifest and work in open G tuning? Well, I'm glad you asked. Here we are in open G tuning, and it's the same thing. We've tuned to a G major chord. That's a G major. If we go to the 5th fret, that's a C major, and if we go to the 7th fret, that's a D major. Again, those 1, 4, and 5 chords are in the same location. G, or 1 chord, C, 4 chord, D, 5 chord. But what about minor chords? We follow the same procedure. We tune this guitar to open G tuning, meaning it contains the G, the B, and the D note. We need to find that B string, which is the 3rd, and manipulate it to make the minor chord. That B string is in its familiar place, the 2nd string. So if we take any major chord shape and we flat the B string by 1 fret, meaning move it towards the headstock 1 fret, we now have a minor chord shape. And it's as easy as that. You have your major chord shape, flat the 3rd, and you get your minor chord shape. But what about minor tunings? Can you only play minor chords? I'm glad you asked again. Here we are in D minor tuning, and it's the same exact process, but flipped. Check this out. If I strum all the strings open, remember we have a D, an F note, and an A note. That makes a D minor chord. That's minor. This means now if I go ahead and bar the 5th fret, the root note's still a G, it's a G minor chord. If I bar the 7th fret, and that root note's an A, that's an A minor chord. So if you're in a minor tuning, how do you make a major chord? It's actually super easy. Again, it comes down to the 3rd. We tune our guitar to the chord containing the 1st, the 3rd, and 5th degree of the scale. The 3rd is what controls a chord's tonality, meaning is it major or minor. So if we're in a major tuning and we drop the 3rd to make a minor chord, that means if we're in a minor tuning, we raise the 3rd to make a major chord. So here it is. Check this out. Again, I'm going to isolate the high 4 strings because it makes barring a little bit easier. That's my minor chord. I find that F string, which is our 3rd string, raise it 1 single fret, use my middle finger for that. I've just created a major chord. So now I have my minor chords, and I can now create a major chord just by virtue of raising that 3rd. So now that you understand how to get chords in any major or minor tuning, what about scales? Those are actually pretty darn easy. Let me show you. Back in D major tuning, we're here to figure out scales. I want you to lean on this universal rule of a major scale and how it's spaced. Whole step, half step, whole step, half step. What the heck does that even mean? If that doesn't register, don't worry about it. We're just going to count frets. In fact, we're going to take the string that names the tuning, and I'm going to have you execute this pattern. And if you remember this pattern, you can figure out any scale in any tuning. Check this out. So we're in D major tuning. D, A, D, F sharp, A, D. I want you to isolate that high D string. It's named after the tuning, or rather the tuning's named after it. And we're going to execute this pattern. Open, 2nd fret, 4th fret, 5th fret, 7th fret, 9th fret, 11th fret, 12th fret. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, the major scale. It's as easy as that. Just remember that. Open, 2nd, 4th, 5th, 7th, 9th, 11th, 12th. And now you have a D major scale in open D tuning. But how does that manifest in G major tuning? Let's look. It's actually the same in G major tuning. But instead of isolating a D string, we're going to isolate a G string because that's the string that the tuning's named after, right? So we're going to go ahead and take a look at our G string, 3rd string, execute the same exact pattern. Open, 2nd, 4th, 5th, 7th, 9th, 11th, 12th. Major scale on the G string. The string that names the tuning is where you want to execute this pattern. And again, it manifests beautifully in this tuning. It's as easy as that. But how does that work in a minor tuning? Well, let's look. Here we are in D minor tuning, and we're going to follow the same exact process, but the pattern's going to be different. We're going to find the string that names the tuning, so we're going to isolate the high D string in this D minor tuning, and we're going to go ahead and follow the minor scale pattern. That is open, 2nd, 3rd, 5th, 7th, 8th, 10th, 12th. I'll do that one more time real quick. Open, 2nd, 3rd, 5th, 7th, 8th, 10th, 12th. The minor scale pattern for a minor tuning, and we can go ahead and strum all the strings with that. It sounds like this. So there you have it. Scales in any tuning. For major, follow the major scale pattern. For minor, follow the minor scale pattern. So what are these universal rules in a condensed fashion? Let me go over those. The 3 universal rules or steps to decode any alternate tuning are as such. Number 1, identify the notes you need. Lay out the scale, identify the 1st degree, 3rd degree, and 5th degree. That's going to be what you need to create the chord you're going to tune to. Second, identify the chords. That's pretty easy. You tune your guitar to a chord, so if you strum all 6 strings, it's a chord. If you bar any fret, it's also going to be a major or minor chord depending on the tuning. And remember, for a major chord in a major tuning, bar all 6 strings. For a minor chord in a major tuning, take the 3rd and flat it by a half step or 1 fret. The converse is true for minor tunings. If you bar all 6 strings in a minor tuning, it's going to elicit a minor chord. If you want to make that chord major, go ahead and raise the 3rd or the string that is tuned to the 3rd 1 fret towards the body. And the last step is to identify the scales, and that's pretty easy. Take a string that names the tuning. So again, if you're an open D tuning, isolate the D string and follow the major scale pattern if it's a major tuning. Open 2nd, 4th, 5th, 7th, 9th, 11th, and 12th. If it's a minor tuning, you're going to do the same exact process with a subtly different pattern. You're going to take the string that names the tuning and execute the minor scale pattern. Open 2nd, 3rd, 5th, 7th, 8th, 10th, and 12th. And remember, with alternate tunings, it's all about experimentation. So getting there is really half the battle, and it unlocks a ton of fun. So feel free to go forward and decode alternate tunings as you wish. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch this lesson. Just by showing up today, you've become a better guitar player, and for that, you should pat yourself on the back. Now, I want to know how this lesson went, so please leave me a comment below. Plus, if you have any additional alternate tuning tips you want to share with your fellow guitar geeks, you can leave those there as well. If you enjoyed this lesson, I know you'd be a perfect fit for Tony's Acoustic Challenge. Tony's Acoustic Challenge is an acoustic guitar program like you've never seen before. To see how it can take your playing to the next level, go ahead and click on the link here in the video or in the description below. Thanks so much, and I hope to see you soon.